Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is Rich Gausselin of Glenview Art League. He published a series of books called How the Grandmas and Grandpas Saved Christmas. Welcome, Rich. How long did it take you to write this book?
Well, it's I think about 20 years so far. Much of it sitting in a drawer in my dresser. I was on my way to Los Angeles one day, bored, and flying in the plane, I just started thinking about my childhood and how much fun it was. And I just started writing my memoirs of Christmas in the 40s and the 50s. And I wrote that in the time it took to fly from Chicago to LA. And then I put it away for 10 years. And then 10 years later, I brought it out, read it to my son and my wife, and they said, that's all very nice, but it's too much history. Kids aren't going to care about the Industrial Revolution being in full swing in 1803 and toys are being made by machines. Mm-hmm. So he said, my son said, let me rewrite it, which he did. And then my wife got involved and said, well, I want to throw a couple fingers in the pie here too. So that's why I've given my wife and my son credit on the original book. And book number 2, 3, and 4 are strictly my creativity.
So, Rich, this is a series that 3 of them are published, book 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
And 4 is
the first book is How the Grandmas and Grandpas Saved Christmas. Book 2 is How They Saved Christmas Again. Book 3 is Yet Again, and book 4 is Oh No, Not Again. So those are the subtitles to the How the Grandmas and Grandpas Saved Christmas. And I am looking at book 5, and I don't know how the grandmas and grandpas are going to get involved, but it's going to be regarding global warming. And who sees global warming more than Santa Claus going around the world,
right,
once a year? And he is immediately sensing the danger of global warming, and he's got to get the message out. Yes. And who better to do that than the grandmas and the grandpas? So yes, that's kind of like, in a nutshell, the gist of book 5.
And your message is message of collaboration and cooperation.
Cooperation.
And pitching in.
Basically, the series is like a sitcom. It's the same place, the same time, the same characters. The only thing that changes is the problem. In book 1, the problem was the elves did not listen to Mrs. Claus, who she said, wear boots, hats, gloves, etc. They go out and play a game of snowball, which is like baseball, except it's played with icicles as bats and snowballs as balls. And a storm came up. They got sick a week before Christmas in the final push, and their toys are yet to be made.
And they are stuck with the deadline.
And they're sick because they didn't listen to Mrs. Claus. Santa tries to build the toys. He says, I just can't do it. And then Joe, his retired supervisor, said, hey, grandmas and grandpas are kids once. Let's call them and see if they can help. So that's how the original series started. In book number 2, unfortunately, kids today are relying more on gizmos and gadgets.
Right.
And the elves can make gizmos and gadgets, but it takes them 5 times longer than a machine. So Santa is forced to buy them, T-H-E-M, thankless, heartless, emotionless machines. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to do it, but he has to if he's going to not disappoint a bunch of kids on Christmas morning. Right. So that is, the elves don't know anything about machinery. Right. So they rely on the grandmas and the grandpas who built the machines to come up and get them running and producing toys.
So Rich, tell us a little bit about your Christmases when you were small. I mean, they were not so materialistic, right? They were not so brand conscious as well, right?
I was born in 1939, and everybody knows the war started a few years later, and we really didn't have much in from 40 to 45. We were in rationing situation. Yes, toys were not made with tin; they were made out of wood. Yes. If you could get it. Much simpler life. later, and after the war effort, things relaxed and toys started, being made of different materials. I moved to Beverly Hills when I was 11 years old, and
You mean the one in Chicago, right?
in Chicago, yes. I was born and raised at 55th and Ashland, and then we moved to
87th?
To 87th. 87th and Western is the highest natural point in Chicago. And they had a huge toboggan slide and hills. Well, my uncle bought me a pair of skis that Christmas because I had just moved from all my friends and I'm lonely. And I put the skis on and I went down the hill. And I didn't fall. And I made it in a few seconds. And I said, well, that's fun, but now I've got to walk up the hill, which is not so much fun. I didn't know you swooshed. Yeah. I didn't know anything
But you
about
had to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, yes. But
Yes.
So
That's what.
so that's the idea. I was just, had such a good time when I was a youngster.
A nice thing to remember that it's just a present that got you going and got you figuring out things.
Yep, that was basically it. That started it. That started the book series was the remembrance.
And you said when these books they have quite a bit of words, right? And then you designed them to be read too.
Right, they're about 9,000 words, and I like to have an illustration on every page if I can.
Yes.
And the reason for that, I think an illustration is worth a thousand words. I think a child, yes, the book is designed to be read by an adult to a child. And hopefully it's long enough where it's 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, 4 nights. It's not just, the whole thing at one time, although it could be. Yeah. But the illustration, I think, is very, very important. So when I'm writing the book, and once it's finished, I cannot start the illustration until I have all the copy, because I want to make sure I plug in the important pictures in the layout of the book.
Yes. So how do you plan that? I mean, how do you plan? Do you plan out number of pages first, or do you?
No. The story comes, and the one thing I do is just basically write. For example, here is a
manuscript.
Here's the manuscript. It's all handwritten.
I see.
I could care less about punctuation, spelling, any of that.
Just get the ideas out.
Just the idea. Yeah. Get the idea down on paper, and the editing will come later, the final editing.
So does that include dialogue too? Do you wait on the dialogue? Just write the story?
I just write the story, and then I let a professional do the final editing. Now, I edit my own work about 14 times.
Oh my, that's...
And
you type it up, by then you type it up.
Well, I have something called Dragon. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
Okay. It's
Please
voice recognition. Okay. So it's a software that you can buy. Mm-hmm. I think I paid like $125 at Best Buy. And it's to be used in conjunction with Word. So you put the headset on, a microphone, you talk, great. The computer types.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
I can see how that can help many.
Oh, if I had to type all that, I'd still be on book one. Yes. But a Dragon, my son put me onto that, and he was using it in his professional work. It's a blessing for a writer. I very definitely suggest if you don't have it, look into it, because it is.
People are working with their hands at the same
time.
It's
voice recognition. So you may say something, and you may get something else in the writing. So what I do is I simply read the manuscript into Dragon, and then I get a typed copy. Okay. I mean, not only that, it gives you the ability to number the lines and whatever. And at the very end, we'll say you're at 9,872 words.
Right.
I mean, that's the type of thing it is. It's very, very nice. I will probably go through 10 to 14 edits on myself before I send it to be professionally edited. My books are in the self-publishing industry.
I see.
You self-publish your own book. And what that simply means is that, like Ken Follett, when he writes a book, his publisher produces millions on a run.
Right.
So they're not very expensive. In the self-publishing, you might buy 50 books. Well,
Yes.
to do 50 versus a million,
Right,
that's
right.
large difference in cost.
I see.
So the self-publishing industry has just erupted in the past 20
Oh, yes,
years.
it's grown very much.
And that's exactly who I use. I've used 3 different companies. I've used
3
Author
different
House,
companies,
and I've used Ex Libris, and I'm using Ex Libris again on book number 4.
I see. So you don't have to stick with the same publisher.
Oh, no,
or is it
no.
in your series.
No, and you retain the rights. You know,
You
the
do?
creative
Okay.
right. Everything is yours.
So,
Right.
can you tell us what you send to the illustrators? How do you request for the
Well,
artwork?
Once I have the copy and I know where I want to plug in illustration, I will send the illustrator 2 things. I will send him or her the verbal copy, and I'll send them just a brief outline sketch of what I am looking for. From there, the artist then will take my sketch and send back a more detailed sketch. And if there's anything I don't like in here, I then tell the illustrator, this is what I want to change. From there, once that's done, then you go into the final
Copy.
illustration. in
So
this case.
do you do this online or do you
Mainly it's
face to face now?
It can be done online, and I prefer to do it via fax.
Fax.
No,
Okay. Or
I send it over fax, but they return it to me online.
I see. I see. How long does it take for one of your books to be actually? So is it available online
Usually
or is it available through the publisher? How do you?
My books can be purchased at any bookstore in the United States or the world,
Really, you
Yes.
are.
because I'm on Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
That's right.
and I've got my own website. And you can buy hardcover, softcover, or e-books. You can, of course,
yes.
e-book is the most most economical. Unfortunately, because of the small print run, these books have to retail for $20. Well, that, look at that book, it's not worth $20. But the fact that it's a one of a kind and you're only doing 10, 20, or 30, it's what they have to absorb in the cost. So the e-book is the way the industry is really going because it's a lot less expensive. You can buy
Yes.
the book in e-book for $1, $2, $3, $4,
see.
depending on it.
And then they can view it on a Kindle, on a
Well,
on any device,
yes, I'm
or
on
is
a
it-
Nook, but yes, Kindle, Nook device.
Do you have to do anything to your book to be? Yeah, how do you tailor that?
No.
Does somebody help you with that?
In
or-
the self-publishing industry, you buy a package from any one of these companies, and the package will include as much or as least as you want. I have them get the Library of Congress number. I have the ISBN numbers.
Yes.
That's all the copyright, everything. I let them take care of it. I let them do the formatting of the book. Once they have the copy, they format it to say, okay, do you want indentations on the opening paragraphs of the pages?
pages,
Are
yeah.
every paragraph to be indented? You tell them the layout you want. They format it. They send it back to you and say, okay, what do you think of this? And I said, well, you didn't put the page numbers in. So let's, number the pages. And from there, they then take the art, the copy, the format, put it together, and then print the book.
So the e-book is just another version of it.
The
You don't have to
e-book
do
is
anything.
the book, just in an e-version versus the printed version.
I see. And you said that the turnaround from the artist to you is not that long.
No,
Because we've
no,
met
I can
other
get
illustrators
usually between, I'm going to say 4 to 6 weeks from start to finish, from the time that I can give a sketch, a rough sketch, to the time I have them all. It could be 6 weeks. Now, usually I think book 4, which is currently in production, will
Yes.
have 50. I've purchased 10 illustrations.
I see.
I can buy 5 more if I think I need it.
I see.
So you've got some
Leeway.
You've got some leeway in it.
And then you in production, meaning that it's already final copy, or are you still going to make changes at this point?
When they send me back, I send them the copy. They send me back a page that looks like this. They send back the manuscript with notes on the side as to why we think this should be the way it is, and we'd like to suggest you make this change. You can say, I agree with you, or no, leave it the way it is.
I see.
So they send this back, and once this is agreed upon, that you made all the changes, they will then format the book. The next one you see will be a printed sample.
I see.
At that point,
with the pictures.
At that point, you don't want to make changes.
I see. I see. Well, my son, who's a 10-year-old, he read the books with me, and he enjoyed it very much. He read it on his own, but he asked me some questions. You know, I thought was very interesting.
What book did he read? Note number?
He read all 3.
Oh, read all 3.
Yes. But he did ask me about the Industrial Revolution. He asked me about the machines and how do they work, and the production, and how much. And how much can Santa produce? So.
Well, I do have in the books, I've got little innuendos of everyday life situations that kids get into. Don't disobey your parents, like the elves did originally.
And safety first, right? Yeah.
In one case here, I've got 2 elves brushing their teeth. I mean, it's just so, subtle little things like that that, are just part of every day. So I've got also educational in the book. I mentioned the Northern Lights. Well, the Northern Lights are called Aurora Borealis in the Arctic, but in Antarctica, they're Boreas Australis in the Antarctic.
So we are only familiar with the
We're just basically the northern. Santa Claus at the North Pole is the Aurora Borealis, and in the South Pole is the Aurora Australis.
I think that it's Christmas as a topic is a very fun topic to address. Even myself, who I grew up in I grew up in Taiwan, which is a non-Christian country, but we had a lot of fun because Christmas was there's a little presents, you have trees with little gifts on them, decorated. It's just fun.
There are 6,500 plus books written on Christmas.
Wow. I see.
And I make a point not to read anybody else's book. And the reason for that, I don't want something to stick in my mind that somebody else did that I subliminally may use down the road, and then they have somebody say, yeah, that's my idea. So anything that I am writing or illustrating is 100% coming out of my head. So I am clear from that point of view of any temptation for plagiarism.
Category is a huge category.
Well, yes.
Compared to maybe Halloween books, which is I feel a growing category.
Well, I think basically the first books on Christmas may have been in the 18th century. There's a famous poem by Clements, "The Night Before Christmas." Yes. I mean, that's renowned. It's probably been printed in every
different versions,
translation.
And different illustrations, and for different level students. Yeah.
And I really enjoyed reading that poem to my grandkids and my kids for the past 50 years as they were growing up.
Was it read to you as well?
I remember as a child seeing the book around the house, and they were much more elaborate back in the 40s and 50s. They were big, huge book, and whereas now you get the little things. Yes, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was read to me.
So, Rich, how has your artwork inspire your grandchildren? Now, I know you have a 24-year-old. How does that?
My grandkids go from 24 to 4. And when it comes to writing, I have not seen anything from my grandkids that say, I want to write. They're in a situation, they're in school, and they don't want to have anything to do with it. Now, art, on the other hand, I've got all my kids are getting involved in the art. I'm not going to say all, I should say many of my children as well as my grandchildren. My son Bill is currently doing three-dimensional art that he's getting $2,500 a copy for.
Wow.
And he's emulating, he's taking rock star album covers, recognizable, and then turning them into 3D.
That's very interesting.
And if you have like the Kiss, and you've got those big red lips coming out at you, some of the Kiss people think that's pretty cool. Yeah. So it's things like that that he's doing, and he's all self-taught.
Yes.
But I have been painting for 40 years, maybe even 45. And I started with acrylics, oils. I'm currently in watercolor because the reason for that, I go to Florida and I work on it, you don't have to lug all that stuff. You know, you could, with a watercolor, you can just get a couple basic colors and a brush, and you know, you've got 1 pound of materials that you can create something with.
Well, I'm sure that's an inspiration to your grandchildren.
Well, I've been having fun with the waters. I had a painting accepted last year at the Glenview Art League for showing at the show, and it was on Wagner Farm. So it's a local competition. They want you to do a painting relating to Glenview, something relating to Glenview, and then that's their, I believe it's called Glenview in Nature.
Tell us a little bit about your involvement with Glenview Art League.
Well, I'm just basically a member, one of the many members they have. But I think one of the things that I see here in Glenview is an art program called Artsonia, which is going through District 34, which I believe is your elementary school district here.
That's our school district.
I've got a grandson in Hoffman, and I've got a granddaughter in Henking. And every month or so, via the internet, I will get a piece of art, picture of a piece of art that they did.
Right. My son does too. Yes.
Okay.
And it's online, available online.
Oh yes.
And then you can send it to your friends.
You can get a mouse pad.
Yes. You can print it out into a mug.
Right. But what I'm really impressed in is the quality of the creative.
Yes.
From these 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds coming out of those two institutions. There's 2 teachers there, and I've
Miss McGee, there's Miss McGee and there's Miss Schubert.
Yeah, Schubert. Yes. Those 2 ladies are doing an outstanding job with the getting the kids. I mean, they're into Matisse.
Yes.
Renoir, all of it, and they're basically learning Van Gogh. They're learning their techniques, and in some cases they are very, very good. I was very, very impressed with the Matisse. Matisse, as an artist, used to cut paper and paste it together to create art.
Right.
Well, the kids are doing the same thing here, and I'll tell you what, you know, pretty good.
Yes, me too. I am very impressed with how much exposure they are getting.
The artists of today in the elementary school district in Glenview are the future members of the Glenview Art League.
Oh, I see. I can see that. Yeah. That's true. Well, thank you, Rich, for being on our program.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
And thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.